After another embarrassing loss, I'm going to task myself with trying to fix the 2020 New York Jets. What's going on? I'm Matt O'Leary, back with another video. Before I get started, just make sure to follow along on social media at Matt O'Leary NY on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You could also buy yourself a Fire Adam Gase shirt down below in the description. So how do you fix this disaster that is the New York Jets? Well, by starters, you have to fire your head coach, Adam Gase. He is now 1-10 in his last 11 games. 1-10. That is atrocious. He is 14-26 since the start of the 2017 season. He is not a good football coach. I tried to say that when they hired him. That was my initial reaction. You can go back and watch that video. I was not happy with the hire. He was my least favorite candidate. So now what you have to do is you have to say, all right, this isn't working out. Swallow your pride. After the year is over, I would prefer they do it now and just put Greg Williams as the interim and put Jim Bob Cooter as the offensive coordinator. I'd rather that. But let's just operate under the assumption that after the year, Adam Gase gets the year, you cut him then. So who do I want as the HC? Well, the guy they should have hired last year, Matt Rule. He was 1-11 with Baylor. He has a tendency, I should explain to give you a little more context. He has the tendency to turn around programs in the collegiate football. Baylor, he was 1-11. He took over that team. They were a disaster. Then last year, they go up to 7-6. Now they are 8-0. Baylor has completely turned their program around, and he is one of the premier coaches in college football. I'm tired of the retread offensive coordinators. I don't want Mike McCarthy. That might be a whole nother video. I don't want to get into all that right now. But Matt Rule, to me, I think is the best candidate and the guy who is going to have the most impact at the NFL level coming from the collegiate ranks. For my offensive coordinator, I'm going with Todd Monken. He was great with Tampa Bay a couple of years ago. He is now with Cleveland, but I'm putting that more on Freddie Kitchens for why they're so bad. I think Todd Monken, a.k.a. the Bucket Hat God, could come in and help save Sam Darnold because that's the case. He really needs to be saved right now. He's only 22. He is not done. Don't give up on him. But his mechanics are trending the wrong direction, and he is panicking because he has no offensive line help. We're going to get into that in a moment, too. But to me, Todd Monken is a great offensive mind that I would certainly look into. On the defensive side, I want Chris Beek. He is the assistant defensive coordinator in Denver. He's been there since 2013. Denver's had a lot of really good defenses over that time span. I mean, this year, I think they're 4th in the league. Last year, they were like 11th. They're a real solid defense, and I think he would be a perfect candidate to have run the defense. After you have your coaching staff, the next step is free agency. Before we even get to the draft, we'll talk free agency. And the Jets have $60 million in cap space as of right now. But they can create even more cap space. If they cut Brian Winters, that'll save you $7.5 million. Goodbye. If they cut Tremaine Johnson, that'll save you $3 million. Adios. Get him out of here. Avery Williamson, who is missed all of 2019, who was pretty solid in 2018. If you cut him, you save 6.5. I think I'd do it. $6.5 million. Goodbye, Avery Williamson. Darryl Roberts, who had an awful game yesterday and went to social media to rip the fans. Adios. $6 million. Zero dead cap with cutting Darryl Roberts. Got to do it. Quincy Enunwa, as much as I love him, he can't stay on the field. He hasn't really played a full season since 2016. If you cut him, you save $2.4 million. That's how 60 becomes 85.4. You could do a lot more with $85.4 million. Now, the Jets have some free agents that are, going to be pending UFAs that are worth bringing back. For instance, Robbie Anderson. What do you give him? I bring him back. I'd give him like a 3-year, $27 million deal, which is about $9 million per year, similar to what Enunwa got, similar to what Crowder got. And he is not your prototypical number one receiver, but he is a solid guy, and I think it's worthwhile to bring him back, especially because he has a connection with Sam Darnold. Alex Lewis, who has probably been the Jets' best offensive lineman they all have been pretty bad, but I'd bring Alex Lewis back on like a 1-year prove-it deal, maybe $3 million. I think that's pretty fair value for him. You also have Brian Poole, who is a slot corner that you brought in from Atlanta this past offseason. I'd re-up and give him a 3-year deal with a $24 million price tag on that. That's $8 million a year. The prices of slot corners are going up, and you're going to pay around $8-9 million for a good one, and he's been very good for the New York Jets. Then there's Jordan Jenkins, who he's just a solid edge setter. He's not phenomenal, but I think he's worth bringing back. Give him like 3 years, $12 million. That's $4 million per. I think that's plenty for a guy like Jordan Jenkins. Now you hit free agency, the big spending. Who are you going to spend big money on? Joe Douglas? I'll give you 3 guys that you should spend money on. The first is Brendan Scherf. He's a guard for the Washington Redskins. I'm going to give him 4 years, $56 million, which is about $14 million per year. I think that makes a lot of sense in order to get that deal done. He is one of the prototypical interior offensive linemen. That's a lot of money for an interior offensive lineman, but the Jets need to shore up that line, get it done. Then you look at another position of need for the New York Jets, and that is cornerback. Who's going to be on the cornerback market that's worth paying? Well, if you look at Dallas's cap situation, they have a ton of guys on pending UFA deals, and they're not going to be able to pay everyone. So I'm banking that Byron Jones is going to be a free agent. I'm going to give him a 4-year, $60 million contract, which is $15 million AAV. You got to get a shutdown corner, and he is one of the better ones in the NFL today. Lastly, I'm going to go with Tavon Wilson, who is a safety, 2-year deal, $8 million, which is $4 million per. Now, why am I signing a safety? You might be asking yourself. Hold on, because now we're going to get into trades. This offseason, I think the New York Jets are going to move Jamal Adams. And the reason for that is he seemed to kind of push his way out to an extent. I know that he wants to be here, but he also said that he would like to play for the Dallas Cowboys. And while I like Jamal Adams, I think he is a very, very good safety, probably a top 5 safety in the game, the impact of a strong safety is not as much as what an offensive lineman, an edge rusher, a cornerback would bring to the New York Jets. So I'm going to trade Jamal Adams to the Dallas Cowboys for 2 picks this year and a pick next year. So the 2 picks this year will be a first and a third, and next year would be another 3rd round pick. So totaling a 1st rounder and 2 3rd rounders for Jamal Adams. All right, now it's mock draft time. So remember, I traded for a 1st round pick. So I'm going to be talking about the 2 1st rounders, which it looks like the Jets are going to be in the top 5 picking, and Dallas could be probably in the early to mid 20s. I think they're selecting, if the draft ended today, they'd be picking like 21st or something like that. So with the 1st pick, I have the Jets selecting an offensive tackle, Andrew Thomas from Georgia. Just solidify that offensive line. That's someone who you could draft and forget about for the next decade. Exactly what you had with Brickashaw Ferguson and Nick Mangold. With the 2nd 1st rounder, I'm taking Christian Fulton, who is from LSU. He's a cornerback. The Jets really need a shutdown corner. They're going to pay one and then draft one. So those are your 2 starting cornerbacks. I think that's completely fair with Poole as the slot corner. Much, much better in those 2 positions. In round 2, I'm going center. Load up on that offensive line. Please, Joe Douglas. I'm going with Tyler Biadasz from Wisconsin. He is hopefully someone that you draft, plug him in there, and forget about him for a decade. Now, if you do make this trade for a 3rd rounder this year, that would mean that you would have 3 3rd-round picks. So I'm going to package a 3rd and a 4th rounder to get back into the 2nd round. And with the second round selection, that's a lot of number 2s, I'm taking a wide receiver, Henry Ruggs III from Alabama. Now, I know Judy gets a ton of attention on that Alabama team, but this guy is really solid too. And if you pair him with Anderson and Crowder, that's a pretty nice receiving trio. In the 3rd round, I have 2 picks remaining in the 3rd round. I am going edge on both. Now, I know that I didn't use a premium pick on an edge rusher, and I didn't sign one, which might be a mistake, but maybe you have to wait, or maybe you hit on a mid-round guy, and I'm going to take 2 mid-round guys in the 3rd round. I'm going to go with Jabari Zuniga from Florida, and I'm also going to go with Josh Ochai from Michigan. I think both those guys have some upside, and listen, I know the Ja'Kai Polite pick didn't work out, but I liked the idea for Mike McCagnon. He was a guy who I thought was worth a swing. These guys, same deal. I'm taking 2. Hopefully one of the 2 pans out to be, at least bare minimum, a situational pass rusher. In the 5th round, I'm going with A.J. Dillon, who is a running back from Boston College. Smaller school, but he's put up some big numbers this year. And I think the Jets need to get a backup long-term for Le'Veon Bell. I don't think Ty Montgomery's back. I don't think Bilal Powell's back as much as I love him. I would go with someone in the 5th round. And I think you get pretty good value in the 5th round with running backs. I mean, we see year in, year out guys go in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round who turn into something. I'm just asking for an RB2 for right now. They don't need another Kareem Hunt or Alvin Kamara in the late rounds. Just get me a competent RB2 in round 5. That's all I'm asking. And then in round 6, I'm going with Tommy Kramer, the offensive tackle / guard from Notre Dame. Load up on offensive linemen. That is the Jets' biggest need. They need to fortify that offensive line. Maybe it works. Hopefully he turns into a depth piece. That's really all you can ask from a 6th round pick. Now I'm going to go over the depth charts. Okay, now let's take a look at the Jets' offensive depth chart. On the offensive line, we have Thomas, Lewis, Biadasz, Scherf, and Udoka as your starting offensive line. you see that there's a ton of changes. Thomas you drafted, the center you drafted, Lewis you brought back, Sheriff you spent big money for, and Udoka was a third rounder from last year. That is a much improved unit. This should not be the worst unit in the league like it is this year. The Jets desperately need this to work out on the offensive side of the ball and on the offensive line to protect their quarterback, Sam Darnold. Now, if you look at the quarterback position, you have Darnold, and then underneath that, insert cheap quarterback here. You could pick anybody off the scrap heap. It doesn't really matter to me, just as long as they are cheap. Like I mentioned before, my two running backs would be Bell and Dillon. Beneath that, you could have someone like a Trenton Cannon on the roster as your gunner and potentially returner. Wide receiver situation looks a lot better. Anderson, Ruggs, and Crowder as your starters. Bellamy, Berrios, and Smith as your second teamers. Chris Herndon as your starter. Hopefully he is healthy next year. He hasn't played yet this year, but last year he was very effective with Sam Darnold, so I'm curious to see what Herndon is able to do for this offense at the end of this year and for 2020. And Trevon Wesco, who the Jets drafted in 2019, is someone that I would like to see a little bit more from in 2020. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, things look a little bit different. Up front, you have Phillips, McClendon, and Anderson as your starter. No more Leonard Williams. Anderson is probably going to take over that role on the defensive end side. Phillips has probably been the Jets' best defensive lineman at this point, so he definitely deserves a longer look. And then McClendon's just really solid in the middle. He really is. At inside linebacker, Mosley, you hope he's healthy next year, and Cashman, you hope comes back healthy next year. That could also be a position of need at inside linebacker. I know that's maybe why you're saying, well, why are you trying to cut Williamson? Well, the Jets need to create a little bit more cap space, so I guess you kind of take that risk, and maybe you could find someone to put in there as well. On the outside, Jordan Jenkins, probably your best outside linebacker. Basham should be on the other side, and your two third-rounders as, rotational players until they establish themselves in the NFL. Cornerback situation looks a lot better on the outside. You have Jones and Fulton, who you just drafted. Poole is your slot corner, and then Nate Hairston, who has, I think, looked pretty solid, actually. He might look like the Jets' second best corner right now. It's probably pretty close between him and Darryl Roberts, but for now, I like Hairston as the number 4. I definitely want to bring him back. Lastly, your two safeties, Marcus May and Wilson, I think is a pretty good duo. Obviously, it's not May and Adams, but with the amount of needs the Jets have, I think moving Adams in order to get yourself a offensive lineman that can help you long term and a cornerback that can help you long term, or just pretty much a more position of need, I think is the bigger play here. So I'm okay with that. All right, thank you so much for tuning in to today's video. Make sure to follow along with me on social media at Matt O'Leary NY. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. Talk to you guys next time.